Greetings ladies and gentlemen, Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel and to another MMO discussion video, and this one is pretty fun. This is all about which RPG game fantasy worlds would you like to see be transformed into a possible MMORPG. There's so many fantastic RPG games out there from the past decade and even the decade before that, and we've all spent time playing single player RPG games that were fantastically designed. They either had really immersive storytelling, awesome characters, large, huge open worlds, great combat mechanics, and from my years of playing games, even before I got into MMORPGs, single-player RPGs, especially fantasy RPGs, has been a big part of my gaming life, and I'm pulling out some game titles that I think would be fantastic for an MMO world if it ever happens, which I highly doubt it would, but someday, if some of these games become MMOs, I would be over the moon. So this is one of those what-if style of videos, which I really like because I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions as well, because I get to learn more about you guys and what sort of RPG fantasy games you like to play or have enjoyed in the past. Let's begin. The first game world that I really enjoy and have spent so much time in is the world of Thedas. And Thedas, of course, belongs to Dragon Age. I'm a huge fan of the Dragon Age franchise from BioWare, and I've played every game from Dragon Age Origins to Dragon Age 2 to Inquisition, and I'm not going to get into which game is better, or why Dragon Age 2 sucked, or why Inquisition is a mixed bag. That's a discussion for another time. But overall, Dragon Age, that world, that setting, and that lore, in my opinion, is suitable for an MMO because it has all the important hallmarks that an MMO really needs. Rich lore, a great story, that fantasy setting with dragons and magic and religion. And when you look at some of the systems of what Dragon Age stands for, like in Origins, it had probably one of the best party-based combat systems I've ever played. Dragon Age 2 for me kind of missed the mark, but it still had that great storytelling that expanded upon some of the characters in the world and the lore in the world. That Inquisition for me was the icing on the cake because it showed us what a modern day Dragon Age game would look like with the better visuals and the hybrid combat of being able to go top-down party style and also real-time action combat. But beyond that, Thedas is just rich with explorable history that I think if someday some publisher or whoever can take the Dragon Age franchise off of EA, they would have so much to work with because the creators and designers of Dragon Age, they've gone back and have written a bunch of history for this world that we probably will never see unless EA and BioWare can get off their ass and do something about the next game, which I hear they're already working on. But if they ever decide to go the ZeniMax Online Studios way, which is to go back into an earlier period in the Elder Scrolls history and make an MMO out of that, I think Dragon Age would work. In all the period and timelines that we've seen in the Dragon Age games, they've all been sort of the modern day history, whereas we still don't know much about the First Blight, the rise and the formation of the Grey Wardens, the war between the Orlesians and Ferelden. There is rich lore here that an MMO could possibly tap into and offer players a chance to walk back into an early period of Dragon Age history to enjoy that setting, and I'm holding out for this. This is something that I really would love to see happen, but realistically speaking, because it's EA, because it's BioWare, because their success ratio with MMOs is really crap, this is just going to be a sweet, faraway dream, but hey, one can dream. The next RPG world hails from another popular franchise by Bethesda, and this one's Fallout. And Fallout really is a modern or postmodern, post-apocalyptic world that MMOs tend to shy away from because it is such a niche and it's not your traditional fantasy world that a lot of players or the market is kind of familiar with. We have seen MMOs based on this setting. We've got stuff like Anarchy Online, Secret World Legends, for example. They're all modern day or postmodern, but nothing quite captures that sort of magic that Fallout as a franchise has. Bethesda's upcoming Fallout 76 looks like it may be a precursor to Bethesda testing the waters for an MMO. I mean, it does have a pretty in-depth multiplayer component from all the info that we've got from E3, and while that doesn't make it an MMORPG outright, I still think that a proper Fallout MMO would work could be great, and that's simply down to the massive, huge post-apocalyptic world where classless players survive either together or against each other in a sort of a sandbox environment as opposed to the theme park MMO. This is one of those fantasy worlds that you have to let the player drive the story or make their own stories in a way that EVE Online kind of does, but I wouldn't mind having the game lead me on a stick in terms of a main narrative as well. But hey, apparently Todd Howard is not a big fan of MMOs and he's just really caving in to the pressure of keeping up with the times where online gameplay and online multiplayer aspects are key to making money and being successful as an online game studio. Next up, and really similar to Fallout, is the RPG world of Deus Ex. This franchise has a large following because of its bold storytelling, its striking visuals, and the setting, memorable characters. And again, I go back to that setting because it's something that when I played I really enjoyed because it really grasped at me. What other game can conjure a futuristic dystopian cyberpunk world that's actually a marvel to be a part in? Oh wait, I think it's called Cyberpunk 2077. So yes, CD Projekt Red is going to be coming out with a game that is probably going to overtake Deus Ex in the future, and either way, I think the point I'm getting at here is that that sort of cyberpunk MMO world could be a hit. I would personally prefer Deus Ex because we do have a bunch of Deus Ex games out at the moment that players will be familiar with, and there's already a cast of characters or a pool of lore to pull from. But I suppose it'll be interesting just to wait and see what CD Projekt Red have in store with Cyberpunk 2077, because that game looks fantastic when it comes to visual storytelling and the premise looks great. And if they can build on that the same way that they've built for their other franchise and make this into a household name, then I would love to see an MMO world based on Cyberpunk as well. And of course, now that I brought them up, CD Projekt Red, I have to talk about the Witcher franchise and the Witcher world. How can we not want an MMO based on the setting and the world of The Witcher? This would have been top of my bucket list had I not played Dragon Age, or if I wasn't a Dragon Age fan, but unfortunately Dragon Age for me trumps The Witcher. Sorry. With The Witcher, the game's immersive open world, the story, the characters are one of the best reasons why we all love the series. And to think that there's going to be a spin-off game now, I think that CD Projekt Red has announced recently, in addition to a new Netflix series as well, that simply shows that there's a lot more to come from this world, and the studio has the freedom to play around with lore and setting and different timelines, and for an MMO, that is the gold mine. Now, it only comes down to, funding and backing, and do people really want this? I mean, I can only put my hand up and say, hey, I want it. I don't know who's with me because I am an MMORPG diehard, I suppose, and would kill, absolutely would kill to see a Witcher MMO. And I'm not just hungry for more lore and, finding out more about new characters in this world, but there's also something about The Witcher that I think they have an opportunity to integrate into next-gen MMOs, which is simply the way they approach some systems. Like in The Witcher's combat, for example, it's all about battle preparation, and if you don't come prepared, then you're gonna get your ass kicked by all these difficult monsters. If The Witcher MMO can sort of follow that characteristic of having players utilize battle prep for open world questing, dungeons even, that's a great capitalization tool to really scream that, hey, we are The Witcher and our MMO is so authentic to the Witcher world that you definitely don't want to miss out on this. So yeah, I suppose this is another game that I'll be holding out for alongside the Dragon Age MMO world. And finally, this one doesn't really count because there's two MMOs already out in this world and setting, and that is the Dungeons & Dragons, the Forgotten Realms. And you guys already know this, Dungeons & Dragons is an MMO that already exists alongside Neverwinter. So these are two Dungeons & Dragons MMO set in the Forgotten Realms setting. And for someone that is kind of interested in the Forgotten Realms, because it's been there for a very long time now, it's one of the pioneers of fantasy worlds for our generation, I am not satisfied with the current lineup of MMOs in this setting. Some of you out there may have played both games, DDO and Neverwinter, and you guys may have liked those worlds, but I have tried both and I just don't find it alluring enough to convince me to stay and hope for more stories, more content. Both those games in a way are kind of linear, and one of them, DDO especially, is aged now, whereas a modern day setting MMO where you can explore more of that world, have better written stories, and have memorable immersive experience in a D&D world is something that I think the gaming market is really missing out on, which is fair because if you're a D&D diehard, you're probably already playing tabletop or somewhere online anyway. You're not playing a virtual D&D style game because that defeats the purpose, right? The whole point of D&D is to sit down with some friends, have your dungeon master cook up these amazing adventures, and not be restrained by four walls and by developers coding and telling you where to go and how to play your adventure. That's what online games are at the moment. There's no element of being a DM and exploring places that you want to explore or doing things that you're not supposed to do. There isn't an MMO out there that allows you to do that, and that's what D&D is all about. That unmitigated, unorthodox, spontaneous sense of adventure. And that, I think, is an MMO world that I would love to see because, like I said, that's the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons, and I would love to see a world that allows players to run their game, run their characters, run their server even the way they want to. So that's all the brainstorming I'm doing in this video. It's your turn now. What RPG fantasy worlds would you love to see become an MMO? Leave your suggestions in the comments section below and let's have a good time. Hit the like button for more MMO discussion videos, and if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more MMO content. Once again, I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching. Hey folks, welcome to the end screen. Thank you very much for watching that video. If you want to watch more, you can click on the cards at the bottom here, and feel free to subscribe to the channel with the button down there, which will give you notifications on all my latest uploads. Later, Gator.